You changed the locks. I changed the paint.
The text came through at 11:47 p.m., just as I was pulling into what used to be my driveway. Don't bother coming in. Locks are changed. Kids don't want you. It's over. Elise. 8 months in the Middle East, dodging IEDs and insurgents, and my wife ends our marriage with a text message. I sat there in my beat-up Honda, engine ticking in the October cold, staring at those words until they burned into my retinas. The house looked different. New curtains in the living room window, expensive ones. And there, parked next to Elise's white Camry, sat a gleaming black Audi A6 with dealer plates. I'd been Matt Harlan, devoted husband and father when I left for my third tour. Now I was apparently Matt Harlan, homeless veteran with a cheating wife and a front row seat to my own destruction. As you wish, I texted back, borrowing from The Princess Bride. Elise always hated that movie. I drove 3 blocks down Maple Street and parked under the broken streetlight near Mrs. Gage's house. The old woman had been our neighbor for 15 years, and she'd sent me care packages overseas. More importantly, she had the best view of our backyard and the sharpest eyes in the neighborhood. Her porch light was on, at midnight. Mrs. Gage never stayed up past 9. I walked up her creaky steps and the door opened before I could knock. Matthew! She stood there in her pink bathrobe, gray hair in curlers, looking like she'd been expecting me. I've been watching for you. Evening, Mrs. Gage. Looks like I'm locked out of my own house. She stepped aside, gesturing me in. Her living room smelled like lavender and disappointment. That man's been there every night for 3 weeks, drives that fancy car like he owns the place. What man? Greg something. Dunlop, I think. Real estate fellow, loud voice, expensive suits. She poured coffee from a pot that had been waiting. Your wife introduced him as her business associate when I asked. I accepted the coffee, letting the warmth seep into my hands. Business associate. At 2 a.m, they're very collaborative. Mrs. Gage had raised 4 sons and buried 2 husbands. She didn't shock easily, but her mouth was set in that particular line that meant she'd seen things that offended her Methodist sensibilities. The children? With your mother-in-law in Portland since last Tuesday. Elise said it was temporary while she sorted things out. So my kids were safe, at least. That was something. Mrs. Gage, I need to ask a favor. You want to know what I've seen? I want to know everything. She smiled then, the first genuine expression I'd seen all night. Matthew, dear, I've been keeping notes. Mrs. Gage's notes were better than most military intelligence reports I'd seen. Times, dates, license plates, even descriptions of what Greg wore on different visits. The woman had missed her calling as a spy. He's there Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday nights, regular as clockwork, she explained, flipping through a small notebook. Sometimes Wednesday, too, if Elise gets off work early. I studied her careful handwriting. Greg Dunlop, 38, drove a 2023 Audi A6 with dealer plates from Dunlop Property Solutions. He owned a condo downtown and specialized in flipping houses in the gentrifying neighborhoods near the river. She's been telling people you're not coming back, Mrs. Gage continued. Says you decided to re-enlist permanently. Did she now? The Hendersons believed her. So did the Patels. But I knew better. You sent postcards to my grandson, remember? You were counting days until you came home. I'd forgotten about those postcards. Tommy Gage was 8, same age as my son Max, and I'd promised to send him pictures from overseas. The kid collected them like baseball cards. There's more, Mrs. Gage said, her voice dropping. Last Thursday, I saw them in your backyard. Greg was measuring the deck, taking pictures, had a clipboard and everything. Measuring? Like he was planning renovations. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning a future. In my house, with my kids, spending my money. I pulled out my phone and called the only lawyer I knew, Jake Morrison, who'd handled our wills before I deployed. Matt, Jesus, what time is it? Jake, I need you to file emergency divorce papers. Tonight if possible, first thing tomorrow morning, if not... Silence. Then, what happened? My wife changed the locks and moved her boyfriend in. I need temporary custody of my kids and a freeze on all assets. Slow down. Where are you now? Sitting in my neighbor's kitchen, drinking coffee and planning my counterattack? Jake was quiet for a moment. He'd been a JAG officer before going into private practice. He understood military thinking. Okay, come to my office at 7 a.m. Bring documentation of everything. Bank statements, deployment orders, anything that proves your residence and income. What about the house? Don't go back there tonight. Find a motel. We'll sort out your legal right to return tomorrow. I thanked Mrs. Gage and drove to the Riverside Inn, a tired-looking place near the Old Mill District. The desk clerk was half asleep and didn't care why I was checking in at 1 a.m. Room 237 smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and broken dreams. I sat on the sagging bed, looking through my phone at pictures of Max and Lila from before I deployed. My son had lost 2 teeth since I'd been gone. My daughter had started wearing glasses. 8 months. I'd missed 8 months of their lives while Elise was auditioning my replacement. But I'd learned a few things in the Army about patience, planning, and the element of surprise. Greg Dunlop and my wife were about to get an education in all 3. I opened my laptop and started researching. Greg Dunlop's social media presence was a masterpiece of narcissistic self-promotion. Instagram shots of him in expensive suits standing next to sold signs. Facebook posts about transforming neighborhoods and creating value. LinkedIn profile boasting about his innovative approach to property development. But social media also revealed weaknesses. Greg liked expensive things he couldn't quite afford. The Audi was leased, his condo was mortgaged to the hilt. And according to public records, Dunlop Property Solutions owed back taxes to the city. More interesting was his history. A quick search of court records showed a restraining order filed by an ex-girlfriend named Amanda Chen 2 years ago. Charges of harassment and property damage, later dropped when Greg agreed to anger management counseling. I screenshot everything. At 6 a.m., I drove to Dunkin' Donuts and called my old Army buddy Wyatt Rodriguez. He ran a garage in the industrial district and knew everyone worth knowing in this town. Holy crap, Matt, when did you get back? Yesterday. Listen, I need a favor. You know anything about a guy named Greg Dunlop, real estate developer? Dunlop? Yeah, I know him. Brought his Audi in for service a few months back. Total prick. Complained about everything, tried to negotiate the bill, hit on my receptionist. Why? He's sleeping with my wife. Wyatt was quiet for a moment. Then, well, okay then. What do you need? Information. And maybe some mechanical expertise. Brother, you just made my day interesting. Meet me at the shop after 9. I'll make some calls. Jake Morrison's law office was in a converted Victorian near downtown, all dark wood and leather-bound books designed to project competence and stability. Jake himself was 45, graying at the temples with the kind of steady demeanor that made clients trust him with their worst problems. Emergency divorce filings are tricky, he explained, reviewing the documents I'd brought. We need to prove abandonment or adultery, and show that immediate action is necessary to protect your interests. I've got proof of adultery. My neighbor's been documenting everything. Witness testimony is good, but photographs would be better, and we'll need evidence that your wife has been concealing assets or making financial decisions without your consent. I showed him screenshots of Greg's social media posts, including several taken inside my house. One showed him cooking in my kitchen wearing an apron that said "World's Greatest Dad." Jake's jaw tightened. That's bold of him. What about my kids? Emergency custody is possible if we can show they're in an unstable environment, but, Matt, I have to ask, are you prepared for this to get ugly? I thought about 8 months of sand, heat, and constant vigilance, about missing Max's first Little League game and Lila's school play, about coming home to find strangers living my life. Jake, I spent 8 months fighting people who wanted to end me. I think I can handle a real estate developer and my cheating wife. He smiled grimly. Then let's go to war. The Cumberland County Courthouse opened at 8 a.m. sharp. By 8:15, Jake had filed for emergency divorce, temporary custody, and a freeze on all marital assets. By 8:30, a process server was on his way to Elise's office with papers that would turn her Tuesday morning into a nightmare. I spent the morning at Wyatt's garage, learning interesting things about Greg Dunlop. Guy's leveraged up to his eyeballs, Wyatt explained, wiping grease off his hands. My buddy Tony works at First National, says Dunlop's been juggling credit lines for months, using new properties as collateral for old debts. What happens if his cash flow gets interrupted? House of Cards comes tumbling down? But here's the really good part. Remember Amanda Chen, the ex with the restraining order? Yeah? She's dating my cousin Rick now. Says Greg's got a temper like a lit fuse when things don't go his way. Throws tantrums, breaks things, real mature stuff. I filed that information away. Men with anger management problems made tactical errors when pressured. At noon, my phone rang. Elise. What the heck do you think you're doing? Her voice was shaking with rage. Hello to you too, sweetheart. How was your morning? You froze our accounts. I can't access anything. Technically, they're my accounts. You just had signing privileges. This is insane, Matt. We can work this out like adults. Adults don't change the locks and move their boyfriends in while their husbands are deployed. Silence. Then, how did you know about Greg? Honey, this is a small town. People talk. It's not what you think. Really? What is it then? More silence. I could hear voices in the background, probably her coworkers at the insurance office where she worked as a claims manager. We need to talk, she said finally. We are talking. In person. Tonight. Can't do tonight. I'm busy. But tell you what, I'll see you in court Thursday morning. We can talk all you want then. I hung up and immediately called Jake. She's panicking, I reported. Good. Panic leads to mistakes. What's your next move? I looked around Wyatt's garage at the tools and equipment that could solve all sorts of problems. I think it's time to introduce myself to Greg. Greg Dunlop worked out of a strip mall office between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. The sign on his door read, Dunlop Property Solutions. Your dreams, our expertise. Through the window, I could see him at his desk, talking on the phone and gesturing with his free hand. He was smaller than I'd expected. Maybe 5'10", soft around the middle, with the kind of artificial tan that came from a salon. His hair was perfectly styled, and he wore a blue suit that probably cost more than most people made in a week. I waited until he finished his call, then walked in. Greg Dunlop? He looked up, taking in my jeans, work boots, and army t-shirt. His expression shifted from professional courtesy to mild annoyance. If you're looking for rental properties, I deal exclusively with sales and development. Actually, I'm looking for you specifically. I'm Matt Harlan. The color drained from his face. For a moment, he looked like he might bolt for the back door. Then his expression hardened into something resembling defiance. I see. Do you? Because I'm not sure you understand the situation you've gotten yourself into. Greg stood up, trying to use height as intimidation. It might have worked on someone who hadn't spent 8 months being shot at by people who actually wanted to end him. Look, Matt, can I call you Matt? This is awkward for everyone. But Elise and we have something real. She's been lonely, and you've been gone a long time. 3 tours in the Middle East. I was serving my country. Right, and that's admirable. Really. But relationships need attention, and did you measure my deck for renovations? That stopped him mid-sentence. What? My neighbor saw you in my backyard last week measuring and taking pictures, planning some improvements? Elise mentioned the deck needed work, and I thought, you thought you'd move into my house, sleep with my wife, and redecorate with my money? Greg's face flushed red. Now wait just a minute. No, you wait. I stepped closer, close enough that he had to tilt his head back to maintain eye contact. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop seeing my wife. You're going to stay away from my house. And you're going to pray I don't decide to get creative about solving this problem. Are you threatening me? Greg, if I was threatening you, you'd know it. This is just a friendly conversation between neighbors. He tried to puff up, show some backbone. Elise doesn't want you back. She told me all about your marriage, how you were never there even before you deployed. She's moved on, and maybe you should too. I smiled at him, the same smile I'd used on insurgents who thought they were tougher than they were. We'll see about that. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Greg, you might want to check your car. I think you've got a slow leak in your rear tire. Outside, I waited in my Honda until Greg came rushing out to check his Audi. Sure enough, the rear passenger tire was nearly flat. Not dangerous, just inconvenient. While he knelt there examining the tire, I drove past and waved. Sometimes psychological warfare was more effective than direct confrontation. Thursday morning's court hearing was a thing of beauty. Jake had done his homework, presenting evidence of adultery, abandonment, and financial misconduct with the precision of a surgeon. Elise's hastily hired lawyer looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Judge Patricia Hendricks was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who'd seen every kind of domestic drama imaginable. She reviewed our evidence with the expression of someone examining a particularly distasteful insect. Mrs. Harlan, she said finally, you changed the locks on the marital residence while your husband was deployed overseas? Elise's lawyer whispered something to her. Yes, Your Honor, but... And you've been cohabitating with another man in said residence? It's not cohabitation exactly. Greg is a friend who... Mrs. Harlan, I've seen the photographs. Unless your friend sleeps on the couch in his underwear, I'd say cohabitation is precisely what this is. The judge awarded me temporary custody of Max and Lila. ordered Elise to move out of the house within 48 hours, and established a schedule for supervised visitation. The asset freeze would remain in place pending full financial disclosure. Outside the courthouse, Elise cornered me near the parking garage. "You son of a witch. You planned this whole thing." "I planned to come home to my family. You planned to replace me. Which one of us is the son of a witch?" "The kids won't understand. They'll think I abandoned them." "You did abandon them. You shipped them off to your mother's so you could play house with your boyfriend." Her face crumpled, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd married 12 years ago. Then the mask snapped back into place. "This isn't over, Matt." "No, it's not, but you're not going to like how it ends." That afternoon, I drove to Portland to pick up Max and Lila from Elise's mother. The kids were confused but happy to see me, full of questions about why Mommy wasn't coming home and whether I was staying this time. "I'm staying," I promised, and meant it. But my problems with Elise were just beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, she launched a campaign designed to isolate me from our mutual friends and turn public opinion against me. It started with Tom and Jennifer Walsh, a couple we'd socialized with for years. Tom was a contractor Jennifer taught at the elementary school. They'd been to our house dozens of times, knew our kids, had seemed genuinely happy when I came home from previous deployments. Jennifer called on a Tuesday evening. "Matt, we heard about the divorce. We're so sorry." "Thanks, Jen. It's been rough, but we're managing. Listen, Tom and I were talking, and we think maybe it would be better if we took a step back. From the situation, I mean." "What situation?" "The divorce, the conflict between you and Elise. We don't want to take sides." "I'm not asking you to take sides. I'm asking you to be my friends." "It's complicated, Matt. Elise says you've been threatening Greg, and there was some kind of incident at his office." So Elise was spinning the story, painting me as the unstable veteran who couldn't handle his wife moving on. Classic manipulation, turning the victim into the aggressor. "Jen, you know me. Do you really think I'd threaten someone?" A long pause. "People change, Matt. War changes people. Maybe you should talk to someone, get some help processing everything." They weren't the only ones. Over the next week, I got similar calls from 3 other couples in our social circle, all expressing concern, all suggesting I might need professional help, all politely but firmly cutting me out of their lives. By the following weekend, I was persona non grata at the coffee shop where we used to meet for weekend breakfast, unwelcome at the neighborhood barbecues, excluded from the informal network of parents who organized kids' activities. Elise had played it perfectly, positioning herself as the victim of an unstable, potentially dangerous ex-husband, while Greg played the role of supportive friend helping her through a difficult time. But she'd made one crucial error. She had underestimated how much I'd learned about patience and long-term planning. The first phase of my counteroffensive targeted Greg's business reputation. A few carefully placed phone calls to city inspectors resulted in surprise visits to 3 of his current renovation projects. Turns out Greg had been cutting corners on permits and safety regulations. Nothing major, just enough violations to generate stop work orders and delay his timelines. In the construction business, delays meant cost overruns, and cost overruns meant unhappy investors. Phase 2 involved Greg's personal life. I'd kept in touch with Amanda Chen, his ex-girlfriend, through Facebook. She was happy to share stories about Greg's temper, his financial problems, and his habit of cheating on girlfriends with clients. "He's a narcissist," she explained over coffee at a diner across town. "Everything's about image with him. The car, the clothes, the condo, it's all borrowed money and credit cards, and when the stress builds up, he explodes." "What kind of explosions?" "Screaming, throwing things, punching walls. Never hit me, but he came close a few times. That's why I got the restraining order." I filed that information away and moved to Phase 3, social media warfare. Greg's Instagram account was public, full of photos showing off his lifestyle and business success. I created a fake account and started leaving comments on his posts. Nothing threatening or obvious, just questions that highlighted inconsistencies. "Nice car. Is that the same model that got repossessed from the Riverside project? Great suit. Is that from the same tailor who's suing for unpaid bills? Beautiful condo. Didn't the HOA put a lien on this building last month?" Other people started asking similar questions. Greg's comment sections became minefields of embarrassing inquiries about his finances and business practices. Within 2 weeks, his social media presence went from confident self-promotion to defensive damage control. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Gage. Matthew, dear, I think you need to see this. She handed me a manila envelope filled with photographs taken with a telephoto lens. Greg and Elise arguing in my backyard. Greg throwing what looked like a tantrum, gesturing wildly while Elise tried to calm him down. And in the final photo, Greg's hand raised as if to strike her. When was this taken? Last Tuesday night. They've been fighting more lately, loud enough that I can hear them through the windows. The photos were dated and time-stamped. Perfect documentation of Greg's anger management problems, taken from Mrs. Gage's property without trespassing or invasion of privacy. Mrs. Gage, you're a treasure, she smiled. I told you I was keeping notes. The confrontation I'd been expecting finally came on a Thursday night. I was helping Max with his homework when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I could see Tom and Jennifer Walsh, along with another couple from our former social circle, Dave and Sarah Peterson. I opened the door, but I didn't invite them in. Matt, we need to talk, Tom said. His face was flushed, and his hands were clenched at his sides. About what? About the harassment, Jennifer said. About what you've been doing to Greg and Elise. I haven't been harassing anyone. Bees, Dave Peterson stepped forward. Greg showed us the comments on his social media, the phone calls to his clients. You're trying to destroy his business. Greg's destroying his own business. I'm just asking questions. You're stalking them, Sarah added. Following them around, taking pictures, making threats. I live here. This is my house, my neighborhood. If they don't want to see me, maybe they shouldn't drive past my place every night. Tom's face got redder. You need to back off, Matt. This obsession isn't healthy. Obsession? My wife cheated on me while I was deployed, moved her boyfriend into my house, and tried to steal my kids. What part of that should I be okay with? People grow apart, Jennifer said. Marriages end. But you're taking this too far. How far is too far? Should I just let them take everything and disappear quietly? You should get help, Sarah said. Professional help. This behavior, it's not normal. I looked at these people, who'd been my friends for years, who'd eaten at my table and played with my children, who were now standing on my doorstep telling me to accept my wife's betrayal like a civilized human being. You want to know what's not normal? I said. Having your friends abandon you because your wife spins a better story than you do. Having people who've known you for years suddenly decide you're dangerous because you won't roll over and play dead. Matt, Tom started. No, let me finish. You came here to tell me to back off, right? To stop making trouble for poor Greg and Elise? Well, here's my answer. Go to heck. Dave stepped forward, chest puffed out. You can't talk to us like that. I can talk to you however I want. This is my house, and you're not welcome here. We're trying to help you, Jennifer said. No, you're trying to help yourselves. You don't want to deal with the messiness of taking sides, so you've decided I'm the problem. Well, congratulations. You picked a side after all. I started to close the door, but Tom put his hand against it. This isn't over, Matt. If you keep harassing Greg and Elise, there are going to be consequences. I opened the door wider and stepped onto the porch, close enough that Tom had to look up to meet my eyes. What kind of consequences, Tom? His mouth opened and closed like a fish. Behind him, Dave was trying to look tough while simultaneously edging toward the sidewalk. Legal consequences, Tom said finally. Bring it on. I've got a lawyer and I've got documentation of everything I've done. Can Greg say the same? They left without another word, but I knew they'd be back. Or rather, they'd send someone back. This wasn't the kind of confrontation that ended with handshakes and apologies. I was right. 3 days later, a police cruiser pulled into my driveway. Officer Michael Rodriguez was young, probably mid-20s, with the kind of earnest demeanor that suggested he still believed police work was about helping people solve their problems. Mr. Harlan, I'm here about a complaint filed by Greg Dunlop. He says you've been harassing him and making threats. I invited Rodriguez in, offered him coffee, and sat down at my kitchen table like we were old friends. What kind of harassment are we talking about, officer? Rodriguez consulted his notebook. Phone calls to his business associates, posting negative comments on his social media accounts, following him around town, and making verbal threats at his office. Did Greg provide evidence of any of this? He showed me screenshots of the social media comments. Comments asking questions about his business practices? Well, yes. Officer Rodriguez, is it illegal to ask questions on social media? The young cop looked uncomfortable. Not exactly, but what about the phone calls? Did he record any threatening conversations? No, but the following? Did anyone see me stalking Mr. Dunlop? Mr. Harlan, I understand you're going through a difficult divorce. Officer, I'm going through a difficult divorce with my wife, not with Greg Dunlop. My interactions with Mr. Dunlop have been minimal and entirely legal. I pulled out my phone and showed him screenshots of my own social media activity. These are the comments in question. As you can see, they're all public information, easily verified through city records and court documents. Rodriguez studied the screenshots. These are, actually, pretty factual. Greg Dunlop is a public figure running a business that affects this community. Citizens have a right to ask questions about his practices, especially when those practices involve safety violations and unpaid taxes. What about the verbal threats? I visited his office once, introduced myself, and suggested he might want to reconsider his relationship with my wife. No threats were made. He says you intimidated him. Officer, I'm a combat veteran. Some people find that intimidating regardless of what I say or do. Is that my fault? Rodriguez closed his notebook. Mr. Harlan, I have to ask. Are you planning to escalate this situation? I'm planning to protect my children and my legal rights. If that makes Mr. Dunlop uncomfortable, perhaps he should examine his own behavior. After Rodriguez left, I called Jake Morrison. They're trying to build a harassment case, I explained. Based on what? Social media comments and hurt feelings? Jake laughed. Matt, unless you've been making explicit threats or engaging in clearly illegal behavior, they don't have a case. But this tells me they're getting desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. Exactly. Keep doing what you're doing, but document everything. And Matt, maybe it's time to go on the offensive. That night, I sat down with Mrs. Gage and planned the next phase of the campaign. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Terry Williams, the HR director at Elise's insurance company. I'd known Terry peripherally through company Christmas parties and office barbecues. She was a sharp woman in her 50s, the kind of person who noticed everything and forgot nothing. She approached me at the grocery store on a Saturday morning. Matt, I heard about the divorce. I'm sorry. Thanks, Terry. It's been complicated. She glanced around, making sure we weren't overheard. Can we talk? Privately? We met that afternoon at a coffee shop in the next town over. Terry looked nervous, constantly checking her phone and glancing at the door. What I'm about to tell you could cost me my job, she began. Then maybe you shouldn't tell me. No, I should. Because what Elise is doing, it's not right. She pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Elise has been falsifying her timesheets for months, claiming to work late when she was actually meeting Greg, using sick days for personal time. And she's been accessing confidential client information to help Greg identify potential properties for his business. I opened the folder. Inside were copies of timesheets, email records, and client files that had been accessed outside normal business hours. This is corporate espionage. It gets worse. Last week, she asked me to backdate some documents to make it look like she'd been working overtime during your deployment. She wanted to show the court that she'd been supporting the family while you were gone. Did you do it? Heck no. But Matt, she's been telling people in the office that you're unstable, that you've been threatening her and Greg. She's building a narrative that makes you look dangerous. Why are you telling me this? Terry's expression hardened. Because I've seen what happens when good people get destroyed by lies, and because Elise tried to drag me into her scheme. She handed me a flash drive. Everything's on there. Timesheets, email records, client access logs. I made copies before she could ask me to destroy them. Terry, this could end her career. Her career should end. What she's doing is fraud. That evening, I called Jake and arranged an emergency meeting. By Monday morning, we had filed a motion to introduce new evidence in the divorce proceedings, along with a formal complaint to the State Insurance Commission. But Elise wasn't going down without a fight. The call came at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. Max shaking me awake, phone in his hand. Dad, it's Mom. She's crying. I took the phone. Elise? Matt, please, I need help. Greg, he hit me. I'm scared. I was instantly awake, combat instincts kicking in. Where are you? His condo. He's passed out drunk, but I'm afraid he'll wake up. Can you come get me? I'll be there in 20 minutes. I called Mrs. Gage to watch the kids and drove across town to Greg's building. Elise was waiting in the lobby, wearing a coat over what looked like pajamas. Her left cheek was red, and she was shaking. Thank you for coming, she said as we walked to my car. Are you okay? Do you need to go to the hospital? No, I'm fine. Just scared. We drove in silence for a few blocks, then Elise spoke again. I'm sorry, Matt, about everything. You were right about Greg. What happened? He's been under a lot of stress. His business is falling apart and he's been drinking more. Tonight, he just snapped. I glanced at her. Even in the dim light from the dashboard, something felt off. Her body language was wrong, not the posture of someone who'd just been assaulted. Where do you want me to take you? Maybe a motel. I can't go back there, and I can't face my mother tonight. I pulled into the parking lot of the Riverside Inn and turned off the engine. Elise, look at me. She turned, and in the better light, I could see that the redness on her cheek looked more like makeup than bruising. This is a setup, isn't it? Her expression shifted, the victim mask slipping away. I don't know what you mean. The crying phone call, the story about Greg hitting you, asking me to come rescue you. What's the real plan? Are there cops waiting at the motel to arrest me for something? Matt, you're being paranoid. Am I? Because this feels like the kind of desperate move someone would make when they're about to be exposed for fraud and corporate espionage. Her face went pale. How did you find out about your little side business with Greg? About the falsified timesheets and stolen client information? Elise, I'm not the same man who left for the Middle East. I've learned a few things about intelligence gathering. She sat back in her seat, the last pretense dropping away. You son of a witch. There it is. The real Elise. You think you're so smart, don't you? Coming back here like some kind of hero, expecting everything to be the same as when you left. I expected my wife to be faithful and my children to be safe. Apparently, that was too much to ask. You were never here, Matt. Even when you were physically present, you were planning the next deployment, the next mission. I was raising our children alone. So you decided to replace me. I decided to find someone who actually wanted to be with me. I started the car. Well, you found him. How's that working out? As I drove her back to Greg's building, Elise made one last attempt at manipulation. The kids need stability, Matt. They need both their parents working together. They need parents they can trust. You're not that person anymore. I'm still their mother. Yes, you are. And when you're ready to act like it, we can discuss visitation. Until then, stay away from my house and my children. I dropped her off and drove home, knowing that the real war was just beginning. The next morning brought a surprise. Greg Dunlop standing on my front porch at 7 a.m., looking like he hadn't slept in days. We need to talk, he said when I opened the door. About what? About ending this before someone gets hurt? I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. Max and Lila were getting ready for school, and I didn't want them to hear whatever Greg had come to say. I'm listening. Greg looked around nervously, as if expecting cameras or recording devices. You've been very thorough in your investigation. Very creative. I'm a detail-oriented person. The thing is, Matt, you're destroying more than just my business. You're hurting Elise too, and she doesn't deserve that. Elise made her choices. She made a mistake. People make mistakes. I studied Greg's face. He looked genuinely haggard, with dark circles under his eyes, and the kind of nervous energy that came from too much stress and too little sleep. What do you want, Greg? I want to make a deal. I'll end things with Elise, disappear from your lives completely. In exchange, you stop the campaign against my business. What campaign? The inspections, the social media comments, the questions to my investors? All of it. I pretended to consider his offer. And what guarantee do I have that you'll stay away? You have my word. Your word. The same word you gave when you promised to love, honor, and cherish someone else's wife? Greg's face flushed. That's different, is it? Because from where I stand, your word isn't worth much. Look, I know you think I'm the villain here, but I never meant for things to go this far. Elise and I, it just happened. Nothing just happens, Greg. You made a series of choices. You chose to pursue a married woman. You chose to move into my house. You chose to plan a future with my family. Those weren't accidents. You're right, and I'm trying to make it right now. By offering to disappear? That's not making it right. That's just cutting your losses. Greg's composure cracked. What do you want from me? You want me to grovel? You want me to pay you money? What? I want you to face the consequences of your choices, just like everyone else has to. You're going to destroy me. Greg, I'm not destroying you. I'm just refusing to help you avoid the natural consequences of your own actions. He stood there for a moment, looking like a man who'd finally realized he was in over his head. Then he turned and walked back to his Audi. But I knew this wasn't over. Desperate people did desperate things, and Greg Dunlop was running out of options. I was right. That afternoon, I got a call from Officer Rodriguez. "Mr. Harlan, I need you to come down to the station. There's been an incident." The police station smelled like industrial coffee and institutional disinfectant. Officer Rodriguez led me to a small interview room where Detective Sarah Chen was waiting. "Mr. Harlan, thank you for coming in. I'm Detective Chen, and I'm investigating an allegation of assault made by Greg Dunlop." I sat down across from her, noting the recording equipment on the table. "What kind of assault?" "Mr. Dunlop claims you attacked him this morning at his condominium complex, threatening him with physical violence and damaging his vehicle." "That's interesting, considering I was at home making breakfast for my children this morning." Detective Chen consulted her notes. "Can anyone verify your whereabouts between 8 and 10 a.m.? "My kids, my neighbor Mrs. Gage, and probably the crossing guard at Lincoln Elementary. I dropped Max and Lila off at school at 8:30. Mr. Dunlop says the incident occurred around 9 a.m. "Then Mr. Dunlop is lying." Chen leaned forward. "Why would he lie about something like this?" "Because his world is falling apart, and he needs someone to blame." I explained about the divorce, the business problems, and the mounting pressure Greg was facing from multiple sources. Chen took notes, but didn't seem particularly surprised by any of it. "Mr. Harlan, have you had any contact with Mr. Dunlop today?" "He came to my house around 7 a.m., wanting to make some kind of deal. I told him I wasn't interested." "What kind of deal?" "He offered to disappear if I stopped asking questions about his business practices." Chen's eyebrows went up. "That's an interesting offer." "I thought so too." She closed her notebook. "Mr. Harlan, I'm going to be honest with you. Mr. Dunlop's story doesn't add up. He claims you damaged his car, but the security cameras at his building show no one approaching his vehicle during the time frame in question. So why am I here? Because I wanted to hear your side before I told Mr. Dunlop that filing false police reports is a crime? I left the station feeling like I'd dodged a bullet, but I knew Greg's desperation was escalating. A man who'd file false assault charges wouldn't hesitate to try other tactics. That evening, I called Jake Morrison and Mrs. Gage to my house for a strategy session. "He's getting sloppy," Jake observed. "False police reports, easily disproven alibis. That suggests he's running out of rational options." "Which makes him dangerous," Mrs. Gage added. "Cornered animals do unpredictable things." "What's our next move?" I asked. Jake smiled grimly. "We finished this." The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. Greg himself. Mrs. Gage called me at work on Thursday afternoon, her voice tight with excitement. "Matthew, you need to come home. Now." "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. Just come home." I found her on her front porch with a video camera and a telephoto lens that would have made a paparazzi photographer jealous. "Where did you get that equipment?" "My grandson Tommy. He's in the high school photography club. Very advanced for his age." She showed me the camera's display screen. The footage showed Greg and Elise in my backyard, but this time they weren't just arguing. Greg was systematically damaging my property, kicking over planters, breaking fence slats, spray painting obscenities on my shed. When was this taken? "This morning, around 10 a.m., right after he filed that police report claiming you attacked him." The timestamp on the video confirmed it. While Greg was telling police I'd assaulted him at his condo, he was actually at my house committing vandalism. "Mrs. Gage, you're a genius. I'm a concerned neighbor with too much time on her hands. But Matthew, there's more." She switched to audio recording mode and played back a conversation between Greg and Elise, their voices clearly audible even from her house. "This isn't working," Greg was saying. "The police didn't believe the assault story, and Matt's lawyer is going to destroy us in court." "So what do we do?" Elise's voice strained and desperate. "We disappear, take the kids, and go somewhere he can't find us. That's kidnapping. It's protecting our family." "Our family, Greg, they're not your children." "They will be once we're settled somewhere new. Kids adapt." My blood went cold. They were talking about taking Max and Lila. "Mrs. Gage, please tell me you recorded all of this." She patted the camera. "Every word." I called Jake immediately, then Detective Chen. Within an hour, my house was surrounded by police cars and social services vehicles. But Greg and Elise were already gone. The Amber Alert went out at 6 p.m. By 7 p.m., Every law enforcement agency in 3 states was looking for Greg's black Audi with Max and Lila inside. I sat in Detective Chen's office, fighting the urge to grab a tool and start my own search. 8 months of combat training had taught me patience. But this was my children. "We've got APBs out on both vehicles," Chen explained. "State police are monitoring all major highways, and we've contacted authorities in neighboring states." "What about Greg's business associates? Other properties he might use?" "We're checking everything. His partner Marcus Webb is cooperating fully. Apparently Greg's been acting erratically for weeks." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop looking or you'll never see them again." I showed it to Chen. She immediately called for a trace on the number. "Prepaid phone, probably bought with cash, but the cell tower data shows it came from somewhere near the state line. They're running." "Yes, but they can't run far. Greg's accounts are frozen. He's got limited cash, and every cop in the region is looking for that car." At 9 p.m., we got a break. A gas station attendant in New Hampshire recognized Greg from the Amber Alert photos and called police. But by the time officers arrived, they were gone. "At least we know they're heading north," Chen said, and the attendant said the kids looked okay, scared but unharmed. At 11 p.m., my phone rang. "Elise. Matt, please call off the police. Where are my children?" "They're safe. They're with me." "Elise, bring them home. Now." "I can't do that. Greg says if we go back, you'll destroy us both." "Greg's right, but that doesn't matter now. This is about Max and Lila. They're confused, but they're okay. We told them it was a surprise vacation. It's kidnapping, Elise. You're going to prison for this." Silence. Then, "I never wanted it to go this far." Then ended. "Tell me where you are and I'll come get them." "Greg won't let me. He says we've come too far to turn back now." The line went dead. Chen had been monitoring the call. "We got a general location cell tower places them somewhere in northern New Hampshire, probably near the Vermont border." "What's up there?" "A lot of empty country. Abandoned cabins, hunting lodges, good place to hide." At 2 a.m., a Vermont state trooper spotted the Audi at a 24-hour diner near the Canadian border. But again, they were gone by the time backup arrived. "They're making a run for the border," Chen said. "But we've alerted Canadian authorities. They won't get across." I wasn't so sure. Greg was desperate. And desperate people found ways to do impossible things. At dawn, my phone rang again. "Matt, it's me." Elise's voice was barely a whisper. "Where are you?" "Some cabin in the woods. I don't know exactly where. Greg's been driving all night." "Are the kids okay?" "They're scared. Lila's been crying, and Max keeps asking when we're going home." "Elise, you need to get them out of there." "I can't, he's not thinking straight. He keeps talking about starting over somewhere new, maybe Mexico." "Put him on the phone. He's outside making calls. Matt, I think he's planning something bad." "What kind of something?" "He keeps saying we can't go back, that you've ruined everything. He's talking about making sure you can't follow us." My blood went cold. "Elise, listen to me very carefully. You need to take the kids and run. Right now." "I can't. He has the car keys, and we're miles from anywhere." "Then hide. Take Max and Lila and hide in the woods until help arrives." "How will you find us?" "I'm tracking this call. Just stay on the line and keep talking." I gestured to Chen, who was already coordinating with state police. They had a general location and were dispatching units to search the area. "Elise, what does the cabin look like?" "It's old, made of logs. There's a red pickup truck parked outside and a boat dock on a lake." "Any other buildings nearby?" "I can see another cabin across the lake, but it looks abandoned." Chen was relaying the information to search teams. "We've got 3 possible locations that match that description. Teams are en route." "Elise, I need you to be strong now. Take the kids to the bathroom and lock the door. Tell them it's a game." "Matt, I'm scared." "I know, but you can do this. You're their mother." I could hear movement in the background, then Max's voice. "Mom, where's Greg going with that tool?" The line went dead. The helicopter ride to the search area was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Detective Chen had convinced her superiors to let me come along as a civilian consultant, but really, I think she understood that no force on Earth was going to keep me away from my children. "We've got eyes on the cabin," the pilot reported. "Black Audi parked outside, smoke coming from the chimney." Through the helicopter's window, I could see the remote cabin nestled among pine trees at the edge of a small lake. It looked peaceful, like a vacation postcard, but somewhere inside that cabin, A desperate man with a tool was holding my children hostage. SWAT team is in position, Chen said, monitoring radio chatter. They're waiting for your signal. The helicopter landed in a clearing half a mile from the cabin. I followed Chen and the tactical team through the woods, every combat instinct I'd ever learned screaming at me to move faster, get there sooner, end this now. But this wasn't the Middle East. These weren't insurgents. This was a scared man who'd made a series of terrible choices and couldn't see a way out. Through binoculars, I could see Greg pacing back and forth in front of the cabin's main window. He was holding what looked like a hunting rifle, gesturing wildly as he talked to someone inside. "Can you see the children?" the SWAT commander asked. "Negative, but there's movement in what looks like a back bedroom." My phone buzzed. Text message from Greg's number. "Come alone, or people get hurt." "Absolutely not," Chen said when I showed her the message. "He's not going to hurt the kids. This is about me. Matt, you're not trained for hostage negotiation. I'm trained for combat, and I know both of these people better than anyone else here." The SWAT commander studied the cabin through his scope. One access road, no back exit, clear fields of fire from multiple positions. If we have to take him down, we can do it clean. "What about the children?" "That's the risk." I made my decision. "I'm going in." "Matt," Chen started. "Not alone, with backup, but I'm the one who talks to him." 20 minutes later, I was walking up the dirt road to the cabin, wearing a bulletproof vest and carrying a radio with an open channel to the tactical team. Greg appeared in the doorway when I was 50 yards away. "That's far enough," he called out. "Greg, let's talk about this." "Nothing to talk about. You destroyed my life. You destroyed your own life. I just refused to help you cover it up." He raised the rifle, pointing it in my direction. "You couldn't just let it go, could you? Had to be the hero, the righteous soldier coming home to clean house." "I came home to my family. You were living in my house." "She didn't want you back, Matt. She told me all about your marriage, how you were never really there even before you deployed. Then why are you holding her and my children with a tool?" That seemed to break through his delusion. Greg's face crumpled, and for a moment, he looked like what he really was, a small-time con man who'd gotten in over his head. "I don't know," he said quietly. "I don't know how it got this far. It doesn't have to go any farther. Let Max and Lila go, and we can work this out." "Work what out? I'm going to prison. My business is gone. Everyone thinks I'm a monster." "Greg, you're not a monster. You're a man who made some bad choices, but it's not too late to make a good one." The cabin door opened, and Elise appeared with Max and Lila. My children looked terrified but unharmed. "Daddy!" Lila broke free from her mother and ran toward me. "No!" Greg swung the rifle toward her. That's when my combat training took over. I covered the distance between us in 3 seconds, tackling Greg before he could aim properly. The rifle went off, the shot going wild into the trees. We hit the ground hard. Greg underneath me, the wind knocked out of both of us. By the time we untangled ourselves, the SWAT team had surrounded us, and Max and Lila were in their mother's arms, crying, but safe. Greg didn't resist as they cuffed him. He looked broken, defeated, like a man who'd finally run out of schemes and excuses. "I never meant for anyone to get hurt," he said as they led him to the police car. "But you didn't care if anyone got hurt either," I replied. Elise approached me as the paramedics checked over the kids. "Matt, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about all of this." "Are you, or are you just sorry you got caught?" She didn't have an answer for that. The drive back to town gave me time to think about what came next. Greg would go to prison for kidnapping, among other charges. Elise would face her own legal consequences, though probably not as severe. The divorce would be finalized, custody would be settled, and eventually life would return to some kind of normal. But the real victory wasn't legal or financial. It was seeing Max and Lila safe in the back seat of the police car, asking if we could stop for ice cream on the way home. 3 months later, I stood in my backyard. My backyard now, legally and completely, watching my children play on the swing set I'd built during my first week back from the Middle East. Mrs. Gage was on her porch, keeping her usual vigilant watch over the neighborhood. Greg Dunlop was serving 2 to 5 years for kidnapping and fraud. His property development business had collapsed, his assets seized to pay back investors and creditors. The man who'd tried to steal my life had lost his own in the process. Elise had been sentenced to probation and community service, with supervised visitation rights she rarely used. She'd moved to another state, Started over with a new job and a new identity. Sometimes I wondered if she ever thought about the family she'd thrown away. But mostly I didn't care. The friends who'd abandoned me during the crisis had tried to reconcile once the truth came out, but I wasn't interested. Fairweather friends weren't friends at all. Instead, I'd built new relationships with people who understood loyalty and commitment. Other veterans, neighbors like Mrs. Gage, parents at my kids' school who judged people by their actions rather than their circumstances. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake Morrison. Final divorce decree came through. You're officially free. I looked at my children, laughing as they chased each other around the yard, at Mrs. Gage waving from her porch, at the house I'd fought to keep and the life I'd fought to rebuild. Free. Yes, I was finally free. Some wars you win by surviving, some you win by fighting back. This one I'd won by refusing to give up what was mine. Greg Dunlop and Elise had tried to steal my life while I was overseas serving my country. They'd underestimated the man who came home. That was their mistake, and their downfall.